Hey guys, good morning. I'm really excited. I'm going to be sharing with you guys pioneer kitchen tools. So tools that go back at least 100 years, but are something that every home should have and use and be using in their home today. So I'm going to be walking you through some of my absolute favorite kitchen essentials that also were in the pioneer home. So I want to welcome you. My name is Melissa K. Norris. I'm the author of The Made From Scratch Life, the host of the Pioneering Today podcast, and the blogger at melissaknorris.com, where we're all about inspiring your pioneer roots and teaching you the old-fashioned wisdom and traditional skill sets to use in a modern world. So I super duper appreciate it if you guys go ahead and share this so we can get everybody in on these awesome kitchen essentials that I think every home should have. So one of the really cool things is I love looking back at the pioneers and some of the basic tools and sets that people had that really still apply to us today. But I have to tell you, I am super glad that I don't have to shovel out a wood cook stove and have to bring in all of the kindling and wait for that to come up to heat. There are some modern conveniences that I am super glad to have, but I really like stocking the basics. And we actually have a wood stove that we use for our heat source, so I get plenty of practice shoveling out the ashes in that and keeping that stocked with wood. But I am really grateful for some of our modern conveniences as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And if you want to go straight to all of the links that I'm talking about today and the show notes, then that link is in the description. And you can also go to the blog. It's melissaknorris.com/kitchen and then a little dash tools. And you can get all of these, but we'll be popping the links in there for you too. Okay, so up first that we're going to be talking about is knives. Now, a knife was something that most of us have today, but was really important in the pioneer days, and specifically some of the knives. This is a skinning knife. And this knife, actually, my husband makes a lot of our knives. So he made this knife. He also has made this knife too. And it helps that he works with wood, so he gets some really lovely wood scraps that he can then make into custom handles, and so we get but this is one that was definitely used in a pioneer home, and that a lot of homes today might not necessarily have this type of blade, which is a skinning knife. But obviously in the pioneer days, right, they weren't getting all of their meat done up for them where it was all skinned and portioned out in nice little trays wrapped in plastic wrap ready to go, right? So having a skinning knife is a really good tool to have, obviously, for skinning. Now, I know not all of you are going to be butchering your own animals. We do butcher some of our own animals here, so a skinning knife is essential. But my husband actually prefers to use this knife for not just skinning, but for chopping up a lot of things. So he'll use it when he's trimming up a steak or a lot of other, he uses it as his main meat knife in the kitchen. So this is a really nice knife to have, but definitely a pioneer staple. So one of the other knives that I really like is this knife here, and my husband did make this one too. I like the wooden handles. Like my hands don't slip on them as easily, and I like this one. It's a little bit more robust than, say, a paring knife, but it's not as big as a chef's knife, so this is one that I use frequently as well. But having a good knife set is so essential. Then the other knife that I use a lot is a chef's knife, which a lot of people have a chef's knife, but knives are really important, especially if we look back in the pioneer days, because they were, and this is definitely a tip for us, is they had the whole animal, right? Of course, they were butchering it themselves, but they used the whole animal. So if you're looking to cut costs and to get a lot more dollar out of the items that you're buying, if you've got some knives like this and you can buy, for example, buy a whole chicken, then you cut that up yourself or roast it whole, then you reuse the bones to make broth. You can skin it if you want. I prefer to leave the skin on, but there's just so many ways that we can use things from the pioneers in our lives today that are going to save us money and are going to be better for us. So that's one tip, is to just purchase stuff with the bone in, the whole roast, and then we can use those bones, the whole chicken. One of our favorite things is actually to get, that we do have to skin ourselves, as grouse. They're not in season yet, but that's one of our favorites. And so that's totally from the pioneer days. But okay, we've got first is our knife sets. And I think that it's really important. Sorry, I've got my little notes over here, so I make sure that I don't miss any of these. But I think that it's really important that we still have these skill sets and that we pass them down, because one of the dangers of living in a push button, ready to go, prepackaged society is we begin to lose those skill sets. So like, for example, to actually know how to skin and to properly cut up a whole animal, right? Like a whole chicken. A lot of people don't have. Now, for a lot of us, we do that all the time. It doesn't really seem like much, but for some people, they've never actually carved out an entire animal or cut up a whole chicken for use. And so I think it's really important that we share and that we teach these skill sets and we learn them if we don't learn them already, so that we have these knowledge to pass down from those who went before us to the next generation. So knowing how to use these basic tools and to prepare meals for your family is something that every household and person, I think, should possess. Okay guys, so next up on our list, I gotta keep myself on track here, as we went through our knives. So now we gotta talk about my other darling, and this is making a big comeback and a lot of people have them, is cast iron, right? Love my cast iron. But something that not everybody has or knows how to use within cast iron, especially as much as the pioneers did, is a spider Dutch oven. So this is this one's heavy, so you get a good muscle workout. Those pioneers were tough, and you will be too. So this is a spider Dutch oven. The reason it's called a spider is it's got 3 legs here on the bottom. And there's a very good purpose for that. Sorry guys, I cannot hold that bad boy up the whole time I'm talking. So with the spider Dutch oven, the pioneers, they were moving a lot, right? And so they didn't have the convenience of, I actually have my range and my oven is right here beneath us. But they didn't have the convenience of that, but they still needed to be able to prepare food for their family. And so a cast iron Dutch oven is fabulous, especially with the spider, for cooking outside. Because a lot of people have got regular, like the enamelware Dutch ovens like this one that you're used to cooking with in the oven and on the stove. But a spider Dutch oven that the pioneers used is even more versatile, and that's why I love it. So for the cast iron Dutch oven, especially for outdoor cooking, so you can use this, you can actually use the spider one in the house still in the oven. You just have to make sure that you've got it rotated right so that the little legs aren't, are down in between the rack on your oven so that it doesn't tip over. But I use it inside in the regular oven as well, but it's really designed to be used outside, which is amazing. The reason that I like the spider ones for cooking outdoors is because it creates a stable surface, and you put coals on the bottom, and then you set your cast iron Dutch oven, and it's got the legs there so it's balanced on top of those coals. And then you've got your food inside, and then you've got this lid. And a cast iron Dutch oven, the spider ones, because they're made specifically for cooking outdoors, but you can use them indoors as well. The lid is different. The lid is flat, and it has this lip on it here, because you're going to be piling your hot coals on top, and that creates the oven effect, because you've got more coals on top, because as we know, heat rises, right? So less coals on the bottom, more coals on top, but you create an oven environment so you can bake in it. I bake things all the time outside and over an open fire with my cast iron Dutch oven. So biscuits, cinnamon rolls, pies, quiches, like anything you bake inside in the oven, you can bake outdoors in a cast iron Dutch oven that has the spider legs. So we use them all of the time. When the power goes out, I can use it. We don't have air conditioning here in our kitchen. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so normally it's not a big deal, but there's a few weeks, usually August and into September, that it does get pretty hot. And so I don't want to turn on my oven or heat the house up any more than necessary, so I will just go and cook outside with the cast iron Dutch oven. So I love having it. Then we use it a lot too, when we're camping, right? When we're having barbecues and that type of thing, so then I don't have to keep running back inside, because usually everybody's outside, right, when you're having a barbecue. And I've just got all my food cooking out there, and I don't have to run inside and away from guests and check on things and worry if it's burning. I know that it's all right there for me. So if learning how to cook outside in a cast iron Dutch oven is something that you would love to learn or get one of our favorite recipes, you can grab that in the show notes, and I've actually got a free PDF guide with pictures and step by step that shows you how to do all of this to cook in the Dutch oven. So you can go and grab that at the blog post and get yourself that free guide, because it's definitely a Pioneer Kitchen essential for sure. So, and then the other kind of cool thing that you can do, I haven't done it because I have enough cast iron skillets, but you can invert this And you could get it hot when it's outdoors, right? So you could set it on top of a rack over the fire and let it heat up. And then you can cook on the lid as a griddle too. So, you know, for pancakes or frying bacon or eggs or whatever, you can do it that way. Okay, so next up with our cast iron, of course, that every pioneer and modern home should have is a cast iron loaf pan. I love this cast iron loaf pan. I got it from Lodge, and I really like Lodge because, and I'm not sponsored by them, but they could totally shoot me some money if they wanted to. But the Lodge is made in the US, which I really like. They're a United States company, and they just do a really nice job with their cast iron. And I love this loaf pan. I've been baking homemade bread, well, forever it seems, but I bake almost all of our own bread. And so this bad boy gets used a lot. And compared to, you know, I've got ceramic pans and porcelain pans and then regular, you know, steel tin pans, all of the different bread pans that you can have. This is by far my favorite. I love the way my bread turns out in this, and it never sticks. You just oil it well, or you can use parchment paper, but I just love the way the bread rises in it. It is fabulous. So having a cast iron loaf pan, if you are a bread baker, plus it even looks cute just sitting on the counter. That's the other awesome thing about cast iron. It totally adds to your decor, but it's functional. So if you want to get one of those, and I've got links to all of this stuff for you guys in the show notes on the ones that are my favorites, so you can catch those. And then up, of course, next, which we can't not share, is your cast iron skillet. I love my cast iron skillet, and every Pioneer home definitely had your cast iron Dutch oven for cooking outside and all of their baking needs, as well as a skillet. So this one just pretty much, I really like the, having an 8-inch cast iron skillet is great because I use that instead of like an 8-inch brownie pan or cornbread pan. I just use my cast iron skillet, and then I bake all of my brownies and cornbread right in there. So it kind of eliminates the need to have some of those extra square pans if you've got the smaller cast iron skillets, because that's the great thing about them. They go right into the oven. So it's fabulous. So we've covered our cast iron, we've covered our knives. Next up is wood utensils. So back in the Pioneer days, of course, a lot of the things they had to make themselves, and they didn't always have the ability to bring a forge with them. Not everybody had a forge or could go to the blacksmith because, of course, they could get their knife blades if they didn't do it themselves or have a forge. You could get the knife blades, you know, made for you from a blacksmith. But for your utensils, not everybody could have metal. So wooden utensils, because a lot of the times they would be carving these themselves, right, out of wood. And I love having wooden utensils. In fact, of course, wooden rolling pin. I like the wooden slotted spatula. I use this a lot, and then just having a nice large wooden spoon. They're some of my favorites. And then I just keep them all. I do have a few metal ones, but I keep them all just right here. They're housed on my counter all the time because they get used. Ooh, that was loud. Every single day. Sorry about your ears there. So wooden utensils for sure were something that they had. And then this other item, so this one technically wasn't necessarily during the Pioneer days, but I think it's over 100 years old when they first started making these. 1916 was when they first started making these little glass citrus juicers, but it's definitely a basic that I think every kitchen should have. So I love using this one. I use it to make my own homemade lemonade if I'm doing lemon water or limes, you know, oh my goodness, because marinated lime chicken is one of my favorite things to do. And I use this all the time, and it's really effective. That's one of the awesome things. It works so well, and it's glass, which I like, so I don't have to worry about, you know, citrus reacting with different metals and things, and it doesn't require power, which is a plus because then I can still prepare things if the electricity goes out, which happens to us often. Actually, it was just out on me Tuesday evening for about 4 hours. And the other great thing is I use this when I'm juicing my lemons to make my own homemade strawberry jam that doesn't use pectin and is also low sugar, which you can grab the recipe for that in the show notes as well. So I think that this definitely has a place. Plus, it just looks vintage and cute. I leave it on my open shelves on my island as part of my decor. Again, I like my decorations to also be functional. Totally fits the bill. So that is another one that I said, originally from 1916, it's technically over 100 years old, but it wasn't going to be found when we're on the Wagon days and the Pioneer, but I think it should make our list. Okay guys, so now we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things from the Pioneer days as well that every kitchen should have, and that is going to be aprons. Now, the reason aprons, especially in the Pioneer days, were so important is because they didn't have the clothes we do now. Like, Seriously, we have to always go through our closets. We're always donating or saying we need to get our closets organized. That was not an issue in the pioneer days, right? They had their Sunday best. So they had one dress if you were a woman, or one outfit that you wore to church on Sunday or for very special occasions. Then you had at least one, maybe two if you were lucky, everyday or workday clothes or dresses, again, if you're a woman. And then you had like your tour dress, like your oldest dress that you work. So maybe four items of clothing, guys. And those weren't something that got replaced every season, right? They wore them until they were wore out. And then they would transfer them. The Sunday best as it got worn would go to a workday dress, and then so on and so forth. They would rotate through them. So having an apron was super important because it helped their clothes last longer, right? It protected them. And they were doing a lot of work, so it would keep them clean. So I love having an apron. This one I have because it's red and white, because when I'm canning homemade tomato sauce and raspberry jam and strawberry jam, and you got the splatters, well, then I don't have to worry about the red stains because they just camouflage on and in there, right? The other great things about aprons that I have found, not only do they keep your clothes clean, which is really important, but they work great as using as a hot pad. So when you've got it on, which I could do that, right? So when you have your apron on, you can just grab, because the handles of our cast iron, they get hot, right? So you can use it as a hot pad. So you can use it when you're grabbing a dish or anything like that to help with keep your hands from getting burnt, because nobody likes that. I love ones that have pockets. This one's a small pocket, but even in a modern home, I can fit my cell phone in there. I can put clothespins in there if I'm out putting clothes on the line, whatever it might be. I can just go ahead and I can even slide the measuring spoons in there if I'm not using them right at the time. So that comes in handy. And then when you're, messing with wet ingredients, or your hands are, I'll wash them, and then I don't even have to go and grab a dish towel. I just will wipe them right on my apron. And of course, I'm a messy cook. I think that's a sign of an excellent cook. That's my story. We're going to stick to it. So having the apron really helps with that. And if it's a little bit chilly out, I like having the apron on because it adds a little bit extra warmth, especially in the winter times or if your house is cool. So I love having those aprons. Plus, like a lot of times they would have their dress on and they'd have their apron on all day. And then if company came, because they didn't have TV, so they weren't, listening to podcasts or all that kind of things and watching TV. If company came unexpectedly, they could quickly remove their apron and look presentable. So it's definitely, aprons have their place in a pioneer kitchen. One of my favorite places, and you guys are in luck, is an apron company that I got all of these aprons from, and I've had these for actually going on 4 years, and I use them all the time. I use them for canning, regular cooking, and baking. This one is called the Maryland Chick, and it's one of my favorites. So that's this pattern here. It's very vintagey, and I love it. So it's called the Maryland Country Chick. So this one is one of my favorites, and you can grab that. And then this one I love because it is my daughter's. She has a matching apron. They have kids' aprons. They have men's aprons. They have chef's aprons. They have all kinds of different prints and stuff. But I love that because I think it's important that we teach our children or grandchildren, any kids in your life, how to do this stuff. They need to have these skill sets. So she has an apron that matches mom so that we can get to cooking and doing stuff in the kitchen, which is really fun. And then again, I just hang these up on, I have a little old-fashioned decorative knob screwed into the wall, and I just hang them on the wall in the kitchen. So they're always there ready for use. And again, they double as decoration because you kind of caught on that I like that aspect, right? So these are the three that I keep hanging out that we use the most. So up next, we got to talk about something that the pioneers had was, and I love these because they're kind of vintage inspired, but it's dish towels, right? So dish towels are something, they didn't have paper towels back then. So you didn't have napkins and paper towels and everything. You used fabric and you reused them until they fell apart and basically disintegrated, because you would use them, first they'd be your kitchen towels and they just would become rags. And then when they finally were too rotten to use anymore, they would get rid of them. But having a dish towel is great because these, again, I keep mine just hanging actually on the, if you can see that. I just keep mine, you can see I've got one right here. I keep a couple just hanging right here, and then I will use them when I'm cooking. If I don't have a hot pad, I can grab it like that. And then whenever I'm baking bread or anything like that, when it comes out of the oven, I'll throw this over top, just in case a fly snuck into the house, to make sure that my food stays covered. I'll use them to wrap food in, and I'll even use them to wrap dishes in, especially if I've baked something and I need to take it somewhere. I'll use this and wrap it around the loaf pan or whatever it might be to help us as we're going. So And of course, you could dry your dishes with it too. It is a kitchen dish towel, right? But I just love those. So we've got our dish towels. Next up is some of my favorite things to talk about is cookbooks, right? Because they weren't going and purchase prepackaged mixes or convenience foods or even really going out to restaurants very often. You were cooking at home in the Pioneer. And even when you were traveling via wagon, you brought your trusty cast iron Dutch oven and you were cooking along the trail, right? So some of my favorite cookbooks, of course, this one probably won't come as a surprise to most of you, but this is my book, The Made from Scratch Life. So this is one of my favorite cookbooks, big surprise there, right? But what I did is, this is all of my family's favorite recipes. So I've got some of my great-grandma's recipes in here on both sides of my family, my grandma, my mom's, and some of my own, some from my husband's side of the family, from his grandma. So this is really all of our favorite family, old-fashioned, from scratch, tried and true recipes, because I don't like cookbooks that have, for me personally, that have ingredients. Like if I'm looking at a recipe and it says to use a can of condensed cream, such and such, you know, a box mix of this and that, to me, that's not Pioneer cooking. And I try not to use those type of items. So this is all from scratch. I'll show you how to make your own homemade condensed soup because it's super easy and you can use, you know, organic ingredients. It whips up in like 4 minutes. So that's the kind of cooking that you will find in this book. And that's the kind of cookbooks that I love and recipes that I use time and time again. So another thing that you can do, and this is the other one that I use a lot, is you can create a recipe binder. So this, when I got married, y'all, way long time ago, back in 1999, my aunt, as a wedding gift, she got me this little kitchen recipe binder. And when I first got it, it was filled with these pages, and in each section or each category, she hand wrote out her favorite recipes from her family that were their favorites, so that I had some starter recipes to get me started with. And then over time, I just added my own recipes in there as well. And then of course, as the internet dawned and we had that age, I could print out recipes too and add in here. So, but I actually need to reorganize this. But this is a great way to keep those family recipes or your favorite recipes, or to create these for your kids or people in your life so that you're passing on, you know, those favorite recipes. Because if a recipe makes it into this book, that baby is gold, right? It is super good. So what I did is most of the recipes in here came from all of those family recipes that were in here. So I actually keep this one on my shelf and use it more often just because it's easier for me to leaf through because I need to clean this one up. So that can be something though, so that you can create some of your family recipes. And also it makes a great gift. So bridal showers, that type of thing, fabulous. Or if you've got younger kids, start compiling recipes for them now in here so that they can take it with them when they move out, which is really cool. Now, one of my other favorite cookbooks, I like the old cookbooks because, again, going back to the Pioneer days, they typically didn't cook with a lot of boxed processed stuff, right? They knew how to cook. And in these older cookbooks, you will get awesome information that's missing from a lot of modern cookbooks. Just little things like, you know, troubleshooting and why you need to do something a certain type of way. So one of my other favorite cookbooks, and is the Betty Crocker's Picture Cookbook. Originally, this one is a 1950s edition, and I linked in the show notes to here that you can get that still. Amazon has some used copies. It's a little bit different cover because it was originally in 1950. It had a red and white cover. This one was 1956. It was a reprint, but this one is really awesome. It's really robust, but it's really got some cool, just really neat different tips. Like it tells you how to make Canadian honey drops. It's just packed with some awesome stuff. So if you can get your hands on those older cookbooks, this is one of my favorite older cookbooks that I know you can still order and find used fairly easily online. But I like to look at antique shops and thrift stores and garage sales and all of that. I love those old cookbooks. They're so fun. And some of them aren't practical, like some of the recipes I wouldn't use anymore. But some of them are awesome. I've gotten some amazing gems in there too. Those are what I consider my essentials in the kitchen that the pioneers had way back when, 100 years ago, but I think every home should have now and learn how to use them, right? So thanks guys. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed that, and I want to extend a special invitation to invite you to grab your free copy of my Ultimate Home Food Preservation Guide. You can go to melissaknorris.com/preservation guide, and I got the link for you. And it shows you 6 different ways to preserve food at home, over 135 resources. It'll help you pick the right equipment, which is best for you and where you're at right now. Root cellaring techniques, how to use oil and alcohol to preserve food at home. And of course, one of my favorites involves canning. We'll be talking about water bath and pressure canning, how to stay safe with both of those, recipes, tutorials, and it's all waiting for you to begin preserving your food at home to build your self-sufficiency, save a ton of money, and be healthy by knowing exactly what is in your food. So what are you waiting for? Go grab your free copy right now.